Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Mary Magdalene stayed outside the tomb weeping, and as she wept, she bent over into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white sitting there, one at the head and one at the feet, where the body of Jesus had been. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus there, but she did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" She thought it was the gardener and said to him, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him, and I will take him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Stop holding on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell them, I am going to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and then reported what he had told her. The Gospel of the Lord. The words of the Gospel. Our readings throughout this whole week are going to give us 2 things. The first, we're going to hear a lot of the charismatic preaching of Peter and the apostles from the Acts of the Apostles. The second thing we're going to hear a lot of is people encountering the risen Jesus. In the charismatic preaching of Peter that we heard today, Luke tells us in the Acts of the Apostles that his preaching is radically successful. He says, "Those who accepted the message were baptized, and about 3,000 persons were added that day." I don't know about you, but the Easter Vigil Mass that I went to did not baptize 3,000 people. In fact, I think throughout maybe the whole Archdiocese, they probably baptized about that many. But why is Peter's preaching so successful? It's at least in part because he's preaching to a people who are living in expectation of the Messiah. They're religiously observant Jews. They know about the covenant. And when they hear Peter preach that God has made him both Lord and Christ, Luke tells us that they're cut to the heart. They realize exactly that they had missed the boat in some ways. In our own time, however, many of the people to whom we preach are ignorant about matters of God. The question is, how do we reach them? The Church has a document called Catechesis in Our Time, and it notes that postmodern people in our culture, our age, need to hear a 2-fold proclamation of the Kerygma. They need that verbal proclamation like we hear from Peter, but then they also need to see it in the witness of people's lives. And I think that's what our readings are going to offer us, especially our Gospel readings in this week. In the Gospel we heard today, we have a very intimate encounter between Mary Magdalene and the risen Jesus. She's in absolute despair over the death of her Lord. "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him, and I will take him." Jesus says to her, "Mary." He calls her by name. And she says, "Rabboni," teacher. We see this intimate encounter with the risen Jesus. And I think that's what we should reflect on, especially in this Easter octave, but all throughout the Easter season. The question we should ask ourselves is, how am I encountering the risen Jesus in my life? Because it's only when each of us encounters Jesus personally, in this intimate way, like we heard with Mary, that we are able to do that second part, to offer that witness of our lives. Today, in the rest of this week, as we journey through the octave, consider where it is you're meeting the Lord Jesus in your life. Thank God for that grace. And as we receive Him in the Eucharist today, may He give us the graces that we need to bear witness to Him, both in our words and in our lives. Virgo Maria.